Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and joining me today is Adriana Cowdin. Adriana is an entrepreneur, executive coach, author, and reinvention strategist who's built and sold a seven-figure marketing agency and led Fortune 500 and billion-dollar organizations at the C-suite level. She's been featured in Forbes, ABC, Fox Business, and the New York Times, and has coached thousands of executives worldwide. But Adriana's story is much bigger than that, because while building brands and businesses, she was also navigating life with more than 30 chronic illnesses, like pancreatic disease, lupus, and Addison's disease, just to name a few. Conditions that forced her to redefine success, redefine resilience, leadership, and what it truly means to rise. Her work is rooted in the belief that resilience isn't something you're born with, it's a choice you make, often quietly, often imperfectly, and sometimes when no one else can see it. In her book, Stubborn as Fuck, 13 Certain Truths to Rise, Reclaim, and Reinvent Your Life, Adriana offers an honest roadmap for women who are ready to stop living by expectations and start leading from who they really are. Not when the year changes, not when the circumstances are perfect, right now. Adriana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am completely honored to be here, Marianne. Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome, and I'm so looking forward to having this conversation. I think I want to start right at the beginning with resilience being a choice, because when I looked at all your info and researched you a little bit, it really is rooted at the center of everything, I think. So can you take us back to a moment in your life where you had to make that conscious choice? And I guess part B is, did you realize at the time that you were making that conscious choice?
What a great question. And I completely agree with you. When people pick up the book, if they choose to, the 13 Certain Truths, each one of them is very important to me. But resilience is a choice is the first one for a reason, because I do think that everything is rooted in that resilience, right? So
Yeah.
I'm going to take you to December of 2015. I had been recently diagnosed with pancreatic disease kind of in the fall, September, October. And by December, I was very, very, very sick. Had progressed to chronic pancreatic disease. In my case, it was due to a birth defect that at I think I was 39 or 40. They had no idea I had. And
Wow.
10% of the population has this birth defect. It's called pancreatic divism, but only 1% of that 10% will ever manifest into pancreatic disease. So needless to say, I had been in the hospital at this point in December for several weeks. And pancreatic disease, really, there's no treatment. So what they do is they, take away all food, or what they call NPO, and they put you on high doses of pain medicine, nausea medication, so you stop vomiting and having the pain. And then they give you lots of drips of, saline water, sugar water to keep your body functioning. So I got a note from my office. I worked for the president of the company at the time. I was a C-suite leader. And he said, you have to be back in the office December 28th or your job is gone.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think for me, I had made a conscious choice in my life to have a career over children. And so it was my whole identity was wrapped up in my career. So every doctor, every nurse, I was like, listen, I am checking out of this place on December 27th. I don't care what you have to do to patch me together, but I have to be at work on the 28th. And so they did. I was discharged with a feeding tube. And at the time, there was a backpack I could carry it in so I could be mobile. I was on just copious amounts of narcotics. Anything you can think of, they had me on. I was on anti-nausea medicine. I think I was like 80 something pounds. I was in bad shape. And needless to say, I couldn't drive. So my now husband, Eric, who was my new boyfriend at the time, this poor man.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Drove me to work. I got there. The office was dark. It was completely empty. And I thought, well, this is not normal. So I called the president of the company, my boss, and I said, hey, I'm here. And he's like, oh, we're all gone for the holidays. Come back after the new year.
Ugh.
And I sat down at my desk and I didn't even have the energy to like put my head on the desk because I couldn't even like lean down that far. And that was the moment where I was like, I am going to have to stand up for myself. I'm going to have to start showing up for me instead of people that don't show up for me, like instead of for other people. And that was the moment where I looked at life and was like, I am going to fight this. I'm going to fight to keep some sense of career in my life, right? It didn't look like that within a short amount of time. I left corporate America. I am going to be super resilient about what my body is doing because it is revolting against me. And I'm going to own what comes next. So that was the probably the pinnacle decision moment. And no, I had no idea. I was like, I'm choosing resilience. Like that was not something that was going through my brain. It was just, I'm choosing me instead of somebody else.
Wow. What a pivotal moment, though. What a pivotal moment. And in hindsight, you can clearly mark it as the point because it's such a big pivotal moment. And I feel like I need to say, I'm so sorry that you went through that because so like myself and so many of our listeners, that feeling of being wrapped up your identity in your work is, it's common for us. It's common for women, but also going through all of that when you decide to make the change or you have to make the change. Gosh, what a difficult experience. So sort of on that same line, I think there is so many women that outwardly they're successful. Everything on paper looks great. And maybe they even feel like this is great. I've got the job I want. I'm doing all the things, right?
Right.
But inwardly, they're exhausted. They're just flat out exhausted, flatline, just everything is numb. How do you help women recognize when their ambition has sort of crossed over into self-abandonment or even self-destruction?
Well, interestingly enough, so I tend to refer to us as the group of people like women like that as brilliant yet burned out.
Yeah. True.
Right? Like, we're brilliant, but we're burned out. And I termed it the lipstick mafia because we put on our lipstick, we hop on Zoom, or we drop off the kids at school, or we go into the boardroom, whatever it is we're doing, right? We put on our lipstick and put on that face because we're really good at that, especially as women, right? We're used to shouldering everything. And the minute the camera turns off or the minute you're in the car alone, your whole body is like, ugh, right? So it's not so much that I have to help them recognize that. One of the other truths in the book is your gut is your superpower. We know it. We're the most instinctful gender of humans. Women know when something's wrong. What it is almost giving them the permission to say, it's okay to be burned out. It doesn't take away from your identity. It doesn't take away from your success, whether that's motherhood or career or finance, whatever that is. But what it does do is take away a piece of you. And that's what we need to work on. So it's not necessarily helping them identify that something's broken. They know it. It's saying, you've been stuck because it's comfortable, and change like induces a lot of anxiety. You don't know what's next, right? But the moment you choose to be resilient, the moment you choose to reinvent and start evolving, even if it's imperfect, everything starts to shift. And again, you feel that physically, mentally, emotionally, in your gut, all of that starts changing. So it isn't like I work with women and I'm like, you need to change. By the time they find me or my book, they're like, something just doesn't feel right. They know instinctively something's off, if you will.
That's fair. Yeah. I really like the way you describe it, a piece, just taking a piece out, because I think we also have to train ourselves to understand that it is just a piece, not the whole, right? So that's a big piece of it. So when we talk about rebuilding our lives and redefining things, I mean, you had to do that with all these chronic illnesses at your heels.
Yeah.
How has that really reshaped success, leadership, your own expectations around what you can achieve? Because I'm sure you couldn't have even imagined that this would happen. And you, as you said, you chose not to have children. So you probably had this list, like many of us, check, 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 what's next?
Right.
So suddenly the what's next is not that same list.
No.
What does that look like? And how has that really changed things for you?
It's changed them a lot. And so I don't want to be like Pollyanna positive that, oh, life is amazing. And it really is amazing for me now. But it's been friggin' hard. I went through times, and I share in the book where I'm Jewish, and so I'm very close to my faith. And I share times where I was super mad at God. Like, what and the is happening? Are you kidding me right now? For example, the lupus diagnosis. I just went to the rheumatologist because my primary care was like, you have this test that's off. Let's just get you checked. And so I went on December 31st of 24, thinking like it's easy to get in the last day of the year. No one wants to go to the doctor. And so my husband happened to be home with me in Miami. And she's going through this list, and I'm thinking like, how does she know all these random things that are wrong with me? Like, why is she asking about like mouth ulcers and chest pain? Like what? And I mean, it didn't take her 15 minutes to be like, yeah, you have a pretty bad case of lupus.
Wow.
And I was like, I looked at Eric across the room like, I think I just heard wrong. And we walked out, and I was pretty shocked. And not 3 hours later, I got a call from the primary care doctor that said, hey, we got your mammogram back and there's a lump. And so we need you to come in for a biopsy and ultrasound. All of this on the 31st. And I literally looked at Eric and I was like, what is happening right now? Like, do I not have enough? I fight the pancreatic disease. I no longer have a pancreas, which makes me diabetic. I've had intense surgeries and Addison's disease and all these other things. And I was like, I get it. They only give you what you're strong enough to handle. But like, isn't it someone else's turn? What in the hell? So I think for me, it was redefining what I could physically do in a way that fulfilled our life dreams. And Eric is the first to tell everyone, like, don't ever tell her she has to stop working. She's never going to stop working. She loves it. It's who she is, right? But what I have done is realize I only have a very short amount of energy every day, about 3 to 4 hours. And that doesn't mean I'm sleeping the rest of the time. It means my body has to physically be at rest. I can't be in meetings. I can't be like actively writing things, whatever the case may be. So I have to be very intentional about who I give my time to, why I give my time, and what the result is. And so that is more of a lesson than anything, which is as you start to redefine your life, whether it's in my case, because of physical situation, medical, or let's say it's financial or relationship, you become super intentional about who gets your time, how much time they get, why you're giving that time, and the value that you get from it.
Yeah.
And you just stop asking for permission. I stopped asking everyone else for permission and started doing what was the best for me. And it has turned out to be the best for everyone else.
Yeah. And I would just add, and it gets easier. The more you do it, right? The more, at first it feels like, ooh, should I do? But the more you really set those boundaries and protect your peace and your energy, it really starts to feel like natural again.
Well, it's like a muscle. It's like when you start working out, your muscles are shaking. You can't quite see them. But the more you start doing it, you have that muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
So yes, it absolutely gets easier.
So one of the words that I use a lot, especially for the midlife phase that so many of us are in, is unlearning. Because I think we have to unlearn, I don't know, just about everything.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what was like, does anything pop when I ask that question about redefining success and your beliefs that you held for all those years that really kept you on that trajectory of success in corporate? Is there anything that stands out that you had to sort of unlearn, unravel, really shift to be able to reclaim this new pattern of behavior?
I love the term unlearning. So I think when you say that, two things come to mind. First, I had to unlearn how to be perfect. Like I was raised, you don't leave the house without lipstick. You don't wear sweatsuits outside the front door. I mean, I'm Gen X. Like, yeah, we ran around and drank from the hose and came home when the street lights came on. But my mom was very particular with me specifically about how I looked and how I was and how I was presented. And so I had to unlearn that so that a lot of days I'm just not up for, I don't have the energy to, like, let's say, shower, do my hair and makeup, and then do something else. I have to have like a 3-hour break between those things. So I had to unlearn that perfectionism equates to anything, because it really doesn't, right? At least outwardly perfection, physical view.
Yeah.
The second thing was I had to embrace that boundaries are a good thing. So I have removed relationships from my life intentionally and in a loving but respectful way that did not serve me going forward. And so I don't want that to sound like hippie woo-woo, but I no longer speak to my brother. I haven't spoken to him in years. I had a best friend for almost 30 years, 28 years, and we were just very different and grew in really different directions. And particularly if you talk to people who have medical challenges, for some reason, you'll have a group of friends that feel like they can catch things from you. Like they don't understand that, like, just because you're sitting with me in the house and I'm on a feeding tube does not mean you're not going to be able to eat next week. You can't catch this from me.
Yeah.
And they just disappear. So some people will disappear out of your life, but you have to learn how to let go of the people that aren't showing up in the bad times, that are only showing up in the good times, or that are criticizing or critiquing you for the changes you're making to support the new you, right?
Yeah.
You have to let go of those people. And we're raised that family relationships are super important. Blood is thicker than water, all of these things. And sometimes that's just not the case. You really have to find those people that are going to be your support and community and turn them into your family.
Yeah. And I think for me, I've found, and family's not this scenario, but I've found where it doesn't mean you have to be like mortal enemies with these people either, right? You can just decide this isn't how I'm going to spend my time or pour my energy, which again, in your case, you're saying is super limited, but we're just, anybody can say this. We're not going to pour our energy into people that don't make you feel better or don't fill you up. If it feels more draining, whether it's a person, a thing, a place, whatever, that's your message to just limit the time. And if it is a family member, I often say, because these topics come up at the holidays, sometimes you still even have to go to, I don't know, a mother's birthday party or a Christmas event. Whatever, you could just be cordial with somebody, but still not spend a ton of time with them. There's ways. I understand also there's spots where you actually have to cut it out completely. But if not, then you just limit it. So you keep your peace as much as you can.
Yeah. And in my case, I was really clear. Like I made intentional decisions to remove the people from my life for my sake, right?
Yeah.
But in 3 of those cases, I really put thought into how I was going to do it. It took me time to make those decisions. And because I'm a writer, I wrote them very loving letters and said, like, this is why I'm making this decision. And just so you know, I want the best for you. I'm rooting for you and your family. It's just going to be from a distance now.
Yeah, perfect.
Wasn't that I don't like these people. And it's just that, like you said, like you get off the phone or you get out of a conversation, you're like, I feel terrible. Like I feel worse every time I talk to them.
Yes.
I'm tired. I feel like my brain is scrambled like eggs.
It's too hard.
Like,
it's too hard. It shouldn't be that hard.
It's too much work to be in a relationship with you.
I mean, it is true. If you're with people, whether that's friends, family, relationships, as other husband, wife, partner, whatever, if it feels that hard, there's probably something wrong with it. It shouldn't be that hard. So reinvention, when we think about it, sometimes we think about these big, dramatic, disruptive changes.
Right.
But What does quiet reinvention look like? Because it doesn't always have to be these big, huge announcements to the world kind of thing.
No. I was talking with a former client and former colleague who has now become a friend, and she's going through a career and marriage reinvention. And we were talking about it, and she said, I've finally hired an attorney. I've got a financial counselor. I'm separating our finances. These decisions have been coming for the last year or two. And yes, it's leading up eventually to a break in their relationship, likely a divorce. But that doesn't mean like you wake up one day, like go file divorce papers. If that works for you, great. But a lot of times that's why I say reinvention is more evolution. It's
Yes.
understanding that you're going to make this decision when the time is right and slowly evolving things into who you want to be or what you want or where you want to be, right? It's not necessarily you just wake up and change things overnight. In my case, it happened that way, but that's because my body was like, hey, guess what? You're not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
These 100-hour work weeks, we're done with this.
Yeah.
And I fought it.
Wild how it all just kind of showed up in that small period of time.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. So, what do you say to the person that's listening and feels stuck? They can't really name why, but again, maybe they're exhausted and they just know that something's not right. What's one of the questions or one of the things you tell them to reflect on first?
So, I mean, the first thing I'm going to say is pick up a copy of Stubbornness Back. It will give you the roadmap to get there, because it's not just the truths, it's how those truths are defined, how they showed up in my life. Each chapter has 3 stories, and I interweave business and romantic relationships and family relationships and health throughout all of it, right? So you kind of see different perspectives. But I also share like the 5 biggest myths about each truth and then how to make it work for you. So it is more kind of like a how do you get things started? But what I would also say is, when time has come to start evolving, right? Instinctively when you need to make a change.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about, it doesn't mean that you have to just do everything differently tomorrow. I am a big believer in vision boards. And so the first thing I would say is decide what you want and let your mind go free. Don't be like, well, I want to live in Manhattan, but I'll never be able to afford it. Just let your mind go free, right? Go buy or get some old magazines, cut out photos, cut out words, get a poster board and some glue sticks like it's, elementary school. I do this usually at least twice a year, and create a vision board that you can put somewhere that you visually see it all the time to remind you either why you're making the changes or what it's going to look like when you get there. Because people are amazed. I've gone back to vision boards. I go back every year to like look at my former vision boards, and I'm like, look at the amount of stuff that has manifested in reality. And I think part of it is your brain, we're very visual beings. So look at Instagram and TikTok. We're visual beings. So if your brain is seeing these things every day, it's taking them in, soaking them in. And whether you know it or not, you're making choices that are getting you to those goals.
I'm a fan too, and I do them every year as well. And I think a couple things. Well, I think that they help to remind you where you said you wanted to spend your time and what directions you wanted to go in. And so, I always sort of think about in corporate how we have these, 3-year plans, and you sort of can, build all the templates, and you can say, is this thing that you're deciding on, does it take you closer or further away? You can do the same thing with a vision board, right? So you look at it and One thing I like to remind people is something that I had interviewed Steve Gamlin, and he's fantastic, and he does a whole course around this type of stuff. And he always reminds people to stress how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
So it's just not, I want that condo in Manhattan. show something on your board, or make sure you've articulated how you want to feel about being in that condo in Manhattan, because that makes it become so much more real.
Absolutely great advice. Because it's those feelings that motivate you to get there, right? It's not necessarily like, hey, I want to drive this car. Great. But what does that mean to you? Why do you want to do that? What do you feel like? Is that car for some reason feel like I've made it in the world?
Exactly.
Or, I accomplished something that X person said I could never get, whatever that feeling is. Because the other thing is you'll get there, but you want that feeling to be there when you get there too.
Yes. And to be able to recognize it. The only other thing I was going to add is that I found personally, and I've found with some women that I've helped put a vision board together, that when we start doing these things, for some of us that have never dreamed, never thought, never put our own things first outside of like maybe our work career, that sometimes it's hard at first to even pick the pictures, pick the goals, pick the things you want to try to work towards. And I say, that's okay. Just if you can just do one or two, don't fill the whole board. You can add to it throughout the year, but start again building that muscle, because it's hard to build that muscle and you have to get it back into practice. Has that been your experience as well?
Absolutely. There's nothing that says it has to be perfect or it has to stay the same way, right?
Yeah.
You can do a vision board like you mentioned, like maybe there's only 3 photos, or maybe there's only 5 words and 2 photos and half the board is empty. That's okay. All that means is you're giving yourself space to continue to grow. That's how you need to see it. There's no perfect way to do anything other than the way you do it. We are all different for a reason, right? And our differences is what makes us so beautiful. So your vision board's going to look different than mine, which is going to look different than the person next to me, and et cetera. But yeah, there's no perfect way to do it. So if you're looking through these magazines and you're like, oh my God, I just don't understand. I found like 3 pictures and like 2 words. Great. Do a mini vision board, put it on a piece of paper and stick it on the wall, an 8.5 by 11. Your life doesn't have to be a, 3x4 poster board vision board. Some of us are a little more visual, so ours are.
Oh, we've practiced. Yes, right. I agree. I want to ask about fear, because I think as many women start to make these changes or even think about them, it is scary. It's very scary. And listen, fear can protect us in our life. Fear is there for a reason. But how do you make the distinction, or how do you advise people to make the distinction between that fear that's protecting you and fear that's holding you hostage to a situation?
I love that question, because to your point, fear is there for a reason, right? Like our bodies instinctively give us this kind of internal message that something's not okay, something's not safe. So I would never say don't listen to yourself if you're fearful of something. What I say is understand the root of the fear, right? So if the fear is, and I'll share actually a story about Eric. Every time I go to the hospital, Eric thinks I'm going to die. Every time. And I go to the hospital a lot. So he clearly has PTSD. I have had several code blues. So he has seen me essentially die several times, and I have had to say goodbye to him. So I understand the fear. And yet, if he doesn't address that fear, it takes away from our ability to have a full relationship, simply because this is a daily life we live with hospitals, right? So it is a rational fear, right? Understood. It is rooted in reality, yet it is taking away from his life, our life, etc. So understand the root of the fear, and then look at, how do I address this fear in a way that works best for my life? So sure, anyone's going to be fearful when their loved one's in the hospital, but that doesn't mean every time I go to the hospital, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
So let's work on tools to address that, whether that's a therapist or whatever the case may be, right? That fear can be related to anything. It can be the fear of like, if I leave this company, I'm never going to find another job at a company I like as much, or I'm not going to be able to find a job that pays me as much. Or if I leave this relationship, maybe I won't find another significant other. Why is that fear holding you back, right? Is that fear stronger than what is ahead that could be better?
That's the question, right? The $1,000,000 question.
Right.
I'm just thinking from personal experience on the job question. Sometimes you don't know the answer to that question and it feels like you have to take that leap. But
yeah,
what's on the other side is typically better, but you just have to take that leap.
Yeah. And because the other thing is, like, go back to the boundaries. You're always likely going to have people in your world saying, the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah.
What if it doesn't work out? Maybe the benefits won't be as
Yeah.
good. Yeah, that's all true.
Yeah.
But at least you made the choice to change and try something different.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean it's a life decision forever. Great. You left your job. You tried something new a year later, 2 years later. You're like, yeah, it's not working great. Try something else. I mean, you're not like etching your name into stone forever wherever you're going,
Yeah.
career-wise, really, right? So
Yeah.
give yourself the freedom and embrace your own confidence and your own decision making, right? Because you're always going to have people that are going to be on both sides of that fence.
Yeah.
And to your point, most of the time, the decision you make is going to fuel your life in a positive way.
Yeah. I want to give you a chance to bring up anything I didn't ask around a topic from your book, or anything that you think, is a highlight from the book that we didn't get to touch on. Is there anything specific that jumps out at you that you want to talk about?
I would say probably two things. The second truth and chapter is called Love Fuels Everything. And I share about self-love as much as I do about relationship love. And I know I am very blessed to have the love I have with Eric. It is what I consider to be part of my legacy. But I didn't have that the first time around, and neither did he, right? So it wasn't perfect the first time around. This is a second marriage for both of us. And actually, our song is Frank Sinatra's Second Time Around. So not everything is right the first time around, and that's okay. But you also have to lean into self-love, because if you don't love you, how can anyone else? I don't care if it's business or friendship or intimacy or anything. We've got to learn to love ourselves first. And to do that, you have to accept the broken parts of you, which is really, really hard. None of us are perfect, but we do our best in life. And that has to be okay. Progress is better than perfection because no one's perfect. So focus on the progress. So first, love does fuel everything, and start with self-love. And the second is, I like to say, you should throw gratitude around like confetti. You should be thankful to everybody for everything in your life, because the more grateful you are, the more things you'll have to be grateful for.
Yeah. Yeah. You notice it more. I think once you start really paying attention, you notice it everywhere. So I agree with that one. Well, I love to wrap up typically by asking, and you may have already answered this with what you just gave, but if there was only one message that the listener took away from this, what would you want it to be?
It would be that you're allowed to begin again anytime. A lot of people, especially this time of year, like, oh, it's the new year, I'm going to start now. That's a great time, but so is May, so is November. You don't have to wait for anything to start. A calendar, someone else, a decision. You just have to decide, today's the day I'm going to start changing. I'm going to evolve, and I'm going to reinvent my life. And again, if you don't know where to start, grab a copy of Stubborn as Fuck. It'll give you kind of a clear and honest roadmap to take that first step.
I love that. It's a great message. Where do you want us to send people to? What's the best place to find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Adriana Cowdin. Great, unique name. No one finds it. You can find me at adrianacowdin.com. And you can obviously find the book there too. You can also pick up the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, lots of places. So whatever works for you, that's the easiest. find me and connect with me. I'm always happy to talk to people and work them through the challenges they're facing.
Love that. We'll put the links in the show notes for folks. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a great conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was my pleasure. And I look forward to hearing from the listeners.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Message in the Middle. I hope you found something in this conversation that reminded you that you're not alone and that midlife isn't about winding down. It's about waking up. You're not done. You're just becoming. If this episode speaks to you at all, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to leave a review. It really helps other women find this community and this podcast. Until next time, take care of yourself.